Okay, good evening, everybody. We are just about at 8:30. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started here. Good evening. My name's Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. Just a couple quick announcements. This group is going to be putting on a workshop. The exact date we don't have for sure yet. It's either going to be December 2nd or December 9th, depending on what the church has available. But this group will be having Peter M. from Florida coming up. We'll do a workshop all day long, and then we'll have our regular meeting as scheduled. What else we got? We got hoodies available. We don't have them on display tonight. If you want to get a hoodie, Conscious Contact Group, you can see me or any home group member after the meeting. With that, we're going to have the world's best chairperson coming up here. Kara's going to come up here.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kara, and I am an alcoholic. Welcome home. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting. That sounded a little funny. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. and speaker 8:30 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name only? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with the working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Our sister group is a Big Book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. just up the street at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Coffee is on at 6:15. We have meeting lists and Big Books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a Big Book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purpose of Big Books and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, PA, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. Join our Facebook page to keep informed and share upcoming events and meetings. Now I would like to introduce Mary Rose to come up and read the Just for Today Prayer Recovery. Let's give her a warm welcome. Woo-hoo!
Good evening, Mary Rose, grateful recovering alcoholic. Just for today, prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize no one, not bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Mike to read the preamble.
I'm Mike, I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And with that, we'll bring up Teresa, our birthday girl.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa, I'm an alcoholic. And I'm still alive. Sorry. The AA 12 Steps to Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now Kara's going to come back up and get us started.
The 7th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, food, big book CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce the speaker as a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Let's all give Beth S. from New Jersey a warm welcome.
Hi everybody, I am Beth P from New Jersey. I'm an alcoholic. My home group is Fog Lifters Group. We meet at 7 a.m. every morning in New Hope, Pennsylvania. That rang a bell? Okay. Did I steal your car? My sponsor is Roseanne C. She lives in Colorado, so if you have any problem with what I say tonight, you can take it up with her. You're just going to have to find her first. I have not found it necessary to take a drink since November 29th of 2003, and for that, God's entirely responsible. And I was speaking to a friend of mine on the way over here. I kind of looped her into coming with me and taking the drive at night in the dark. I live in Titusville, New Jersey. It's right across the bridge from New Hope. And we were talking about sobriety, and she's in the beginning of her sobriety journey. And I'm so excited for her. And for she and I to compare stories would be useless, right? And I think that for me, I came into sobriety when I was 23 years old. I stopped drinking when I was 24. There was a 10-month period from the day I walked into AA to the day I stopped drinking. And in that 10 months, I sufficiently convinced myself that I belong here. But my drinking story is not spectacular. I don't have a cool story, right? Like, I didn't run drugs in Colombia. I did not find myself homeless and living under a bridge. And what's amazing is what alcoholics find to be a cool story, right? Like, we're like, man, you got locked up for 10 years. That's crazy. And I would look at that when I was young and think, well, that didn't happen to me, so clearly I must not be in the right spot, right? So what I can do is help you identify with how I felt, because I'm convinced beyond any question that I am alcoholic. So if I don't have a cool story, and I never lost my kids, I never lost my license, I never was arrested, I was never homeless, I never got fired from a job. I got fired from a job when I was 14, but that's because I didn't make French fries fast enough. So I never got fired from a job for my drinking, right? Like I didn't drink long enough to lose much material things, but I absolutely lost that part of myself that shines, that part of myself that has any light. There was no light in my eyes when I came in to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what my story looked like, I grew up in North New Jersey in a town called Hopatcong, and everybody kind of looks at me and goes, Hopatcong, where is that? And that's exactly right, where is that? We are way up Route 80 towards the Delaware Water Gap, and it is a town full of very hardworking people. My dad was a truck driver, and my mom was a bookkeeper for the lumber yard that my dad drove lumber for. So I grew up in a converted bungalow. It was a summer bungalow, because Lake Hopatcong in the 20s and 30s was like a real hot place for the city people to come and have vacation. So this was like an old vacation home that somebody insulated. My bedroom was in the root cellar. So they dug out the root cellar, poured way too much cement, had the baby, me, walking in circles to keep the cement from setting while they shoveled cement out the back door. And that was, right, like, so if you can picture that kind of like, just like real blue collar, real kind of gritty. We heated our house with a wood burning stove, and so I always smelled like a campfire. I would go to school and I smelled like a campfire, because we also didn't have a dryer, so we hung the clothes to dry near the wood burning stove. And it's like, I'm not that old, I just want to be really clear. We were just that poor. So, and if you're wondering, I'm 44, so that was like the 1980s. And that's what we had, right? Like that's what it was. And I was short and round. I've always been like a real hardy, we'll say hardy. I'm hardy, curvy, thick with two C's. And I've always had this hair. But my mom didn't have this hair, so she brushed my hair. She didn't understand that when you brush curly hair, you end up with like this Christmas tree. And so I had this Christmas tree, and to tame it, she would put a headband, which just accentuates it. So I had the Christmas tree, it was like Rosanna Dana gone real wrong, and I was chubby. So I was a chubby, awkward kid, and so I wasn't blending in by any means. And they put me in like what they could afford, right? So I was in like the track suits. We used to go to this place in, I think it was Middletown, called Playtogs. And it was just this warehouse of clothes laid on tables. And it was cheap. So I would end up with these like leopard print track suits. And it's like not what you wear in 1985, but I'm in a leopard print tracksuit. And I have one of a picture of myself that it says Playgirl on the front of it. And like in cursive it says, she's nobody's pet. And I was like, Mom, you thought that was the purchase to me, huh? And so if you can get the picture in your head of this kid, and I'm an only child, and both of my parents spoke to me as if I were an adult. So I would speak to you as if I were an adult too. So it wasn't like you could lean down and have like a cute conversation with me. I was like, so, these Mets, right? You know, like, it was awkward. So get me to kindergarten. I don't belong. I just don't belong. I don't talk like them. I don't look like them. We're not playing the same way. We don't think alike. I don't belong. I know in my heart I don't belong. So my first interaction with human beings, my contemporaries, I don't fit. And I know it. And the seed of different started to grow. And I hated going to school. I hated talking to you. But I needed and wanted so badly to fit and to belong, because I could tell that it was like a necessary thing. Like, I don't think I would have been good as a sociopath, right? Like, I was not going to survive outside of the herd, right? So I figured out what I needed to do. I had to be smart, I had to get good grades, and I had to like be the best. I don't know where this idea came from, but that's what was born within me. And I hear from people that I work with in this program and from your stories that's a common theme. Like, we need to excel. We need to be better than whatever, right? And so that was born in me, and I don't fit, and I feel weird. And around 7 years old, my mom gets diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And at that time, there's like no treatment. They're shooting her up with B12, right? Like, there's nothing going on. Her decline is pretty quick. They don't know anything about this, and they can't tell me anything about this other than this will probably kill her eventually. So I'm 7, right? So now in my mind, my mom's gonna die next week. I'm an only child. And my dad is illiterate, right? So he can't read. My father, being a truck driver, around the late 80s, you couldn't just drive under your company license anymore. You had to have a CDL. So everybody who was driving trucks needed to get their CDL qualification on their license. My dad can't read. So my mom and I are reading the CDL study book into a tape recorder, and my dad's walking around the lumberyard listening to the tape recorder. And this is feeding me, like, okay, if something happens to mom, we're screwed. Like, this guy's not gonna take care of it. You know what I mean? And like, I love my dad, but he would have agreed with me. He would have been like, yeah, we can't do this on our own, Beth. You know? And they had these like way adult conversations with me, like, and I held things that were far too heavy for me to hold. You know, and they became part of that fear life that I think a lot of us end up having. At 10 years old, my father gets diagnosed with Crohn's. He starts to have these intestinal disorders where he gets perforations in his colon, his stomach wall. He has 8 surgeries from the time I was 10 to the time I was 30. And he had about 7 feet of intestine left by the time he passed. So it's like, and it's just me, right? My grandparents had all passed by the time I was 8, so I understood what death was and what death meant. And nobody's coming back. Help is not on the way. You know what I mean? And I'm terrified. And I think that if I just do it right, insert the blank, right? Like, I don't know what it is, but if I do it right, somehow I'm going to be so good that nothing else bad is going to happen. I get this idea that my behavior, my actions are going to affect the world in some kind of way. And that theme is a pretty big theme in my life, right? Like, because it's the birth of self-importance, right? It's the birth of the idea that, you know, if only I manage well, I'm going to get X, Y, Z result. And when it doesn't happen, I've got to throw my back into it, try harder, come up with a different plan, come up with a different idea. There's only self and there's only me running the show. And I'm 10, right? My parents, they continued to work. They didn't stop working until I got to high school. And so I was a latchkey kid. And I watched Guiding Light after school by myself. So I learned everything I need to know about how to have relationships with men and women. And that was it. Like, now school's out. I understand how this is supposed to go. I also started to find this hole, right? Like this, I keep going to school with these kids that I don't connect to, I don't relate with. I put on the face I pretend like what they're saying makes sense to me, or that we're good. You know, I have like a faux life, and I get home and I can just unwind. And that started with, I would eat loaves, like whole loaves of Wonder Bread with country crock. And I have to say that really slow, because if you say it fast, you can say something else entirely. But country crock and a jar of ragu, I would microwave it, and I would just take the slice of bread, throw the spread on, fold it, dip it into the jar, and eat it. I would eat the whole loaf. And like, so you can understand, being a hearty person, that's not helping. And so I'd have to like hide my empties, right? So my mom would be like, where's the bread? And they're like, I figured out you have to like stick it under other trash or throw it out in the trash outside. Halloween candy, it was the same thing. Like, I'd get the Halloween candy and I'd just throw the wrapper in the garbage, and my mom would be like, yo, no Halloween candy. So when I got like my big girl bed, they moved the bed out, they found all my empties, all my wrappers stuck down beside the bed. And so like, it has never been taught to me to sneak. It has never been taught to me to hide the evidence. It has never been taught to me to do what I gotta do undercover, right? Like, that is inherent in me. I know how to do that without any example. Neither of my parents really drank either. So it's like, I didn't have that guiding the way either. I am at my core this way, right? So God, flash forward, God's gonna have a big job with me, right? Like, it's not just like reprogramming my brain, like it's a cellular level problem for me. It was in there when I came out. And so I recognize that I probably can't continue to eat loaves of bread. So I am sneaking around it was called the dry sink. And it looks like a sink, but there's no water to it. And underneath of it is the liquor cabinet, and it's like the bottle of sangria from my parents' wedding. It's a dusty bottle of Kahlua. It's a bottle of Sloe Gin from my grandfather's house. Like, you know, it's like a random hodgepodge bar. It's not like a legit bar. Like, these are not drinking people. So, while watching Guiding Light, I, had made myself a Kahlua and milk, White Russian, I think. There's another ingredient to that. I don't know what it is, because I wasn't much vodka. I was not much of a mixed drink kind of girl. That was not going to be my path, just foreshadowing. So I sat down with my Kahlua and milk, and it was like, I would watch my show. And it's funny, because like, I could have my Kahlua and milk, or then I would make Sloe Gin and chocolate milk. Like, I was not a mixed drink girl, right? Like, that wasn't part of my makeup. But that was my story, right? And it felt, I would take this drink and I would feel that warmth come down and spread, and it was the first time I could take that deep breath. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like that, and your shoulders come down. Like, I'm getting chills thinking about it, right? Because it is that feeling that you get of release. That was my first taste of freedom. And there was nothing better than that. And I knew I had to hang on to it. I had to hang on to it for dear life. So I went real slow with that liquor cabinet. But by the time I got to high school, there was water in every bottle, and it was like, there was no, eventually the gig was going to be up. And by then, like, it was so far in the back that they were just kind of like, my parents they're hippies, right? Like, my dad was like Tommy Chong. When you think about Tommy Chong, right? But my dad had a Fu Manchu. He was a good-looking guy, but he was real skinny, right? Because of the whole intestinal thing. So he was 6'3", he was real skinny, and he liked dry goods, right? He liked the kind that you can grow and harvest. And that was my dad. So it was kind of like, you know, so if you're gonna get messed up, do it in the basement, okay? Because like, at that time, I was like deciding, you know, there was a faction of people that thought it was cool. And the faction of people that thought I was cool were hanging out in front of the Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of the night. You know what I'm saying? And we would go and we'd shoot pool. Like, I don't want to give them a name, but they would play a card game where they became wizards. Those were the people that wanted to hang out with me. And thank you. That's it. Those are the ones. And, you know, and I didn't find my people. I didn't feel like I fit. These were just the people that would tolerate me. And I continued to drink. And my drinking didn't get real bad real fast. I continued to have the food issue. And when I was 21, I had gastric bypass surgery. And I went from being 320 pounds to being half my size. And it was a very wild time because up to that point, kind of, nobody paid much of attention to me, right? Or they pitied me, or they made fun of me, like, but it wasn't a good kind of attention. And when I was 21 and I had the surgery, it was like I went into the month of April as one person, and by the time I got to October, I was an entirely different person. And I was no more equipped to be that person than I was to be the person that went into the process, right? And so I am in a body that I don't feel comfortable with. I am in a world that I cannot relate to, and both of my parents have been continuously getting sick on through the years. So by the time I started drinking in bars, it was wild how fast I went from I can have a glass of wine to I can't stay stopped. And that's what, and again, like, you know, I did, in terms of like, you know, can you compare your drinking to mine? The first time that I really got drunk, I was 13, not by the time I was 21, but I was 13. I was in my friend Jody's basement. I blacked out. I told the boy that I had a crush on him. I threw up and like had my hands in it, and Jody was like, that was really bad. And then I had my brand new black Jordache jeans. And remember, like, I was the girl who shopped at Playtogs, right? So these black Jordache jeans were what's up. And they needed to be disposed of in the woods the next morning in a trash bin, never to be seen or spoken of again. I just want you to take a moment and like let that sink in, what happened in those jeans, that they're not washable in anybody's washing machine, right? So, right, that's the first time I got drunk. That was not like, oh, that's terrible, I'm never doing that again. That was like, oh, all right, I have to wear skirts when I drink. I don't want to lose more pants. That is terrible. Can you get them off? Ugh. So that's the way it looked for me. You know, I drank wine until drinking wine started to stain my teeth. They became this like purplish bluish color. So I started drinking white wine. Then I started to need gallons of white wine. And that's just a little bit awkward when you're throwing the 2 gallons onto the counter. Like, and drinking out is problematic because it's hard to afford, right? Like, the amount of drinking that I did that I needed to continue to do. It wasn't good. And then I started to wake up with strangers. I started to wake up where I didn't know where I was. I couldn't tell you what happened. I was a blackout drinker almost from the beginning of my serious drinking, not the silly little Guiding Light Kahlua and Milks. Like, the going out to get drunk purposefully. I couldn't remember, and I hurt my best friend. I did something deplorable, and I had no idea. And when I was told about it the next day, I couldn't believe that I had done it. You know, so when we talk about, does the person who drinks resemble your real self but little, and it's like, I started to name her. I took a hostage. His name was Jeff. And we started to call the girl who showed up when I drank Celestine. And Celestine would show up every time I drank, and she was fun, and she would dance, and she would flirt, and she would take your car. And I would hear about what she did in my body while I was asleep. You know, in my mind, I went to sleep. That is not what happened. You know, when it started to become explained to me what a blackout really is, I was horrified, because people would think that I would do these things, and I wouldn't do those things. I would never do those things. But Jim Beam and I would. Ron Bacardi and I would, sure as hell. And it became that I wouldn't drink outside of my house because I couldn't tell you what I was gonna do. So then the end of my drinking really looked like me staying in my bedroom. I would unplug my phone, because at some point I think it was a good idea to call somebody. That happened a few times where I was like, okay, I have to unplug the phone when I start to drink, because I'll think I should call somebody that I shouldn't. And so if the phone's unplugged, hopefully I won't put two and two together, and I'll just give up on the idea. Like, if you're unplugging your own phone so that you can drink the way you want to drink, you might have a problem when you're drinking. You know, if you can't leave the house because you can't tell what's going to happen, once you start drinking, you might have a problem drinking, right? Like, it was never like I should stop drinking. It was like, I need to stop drinking with witnesses. I need to stop drinking, right? Like, so I drank in my bedroom by myself. I was drinking 151 at the end because it was the only thing that was working in the volume that, because right, I had that little tiny tummy. So for it to work, I just needed to drink high content. I would start watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding or Old School, and these movies still trigger me because at some point, the DVD, I'd black out, the DVD, or pass out, can't tell you which, and the DVD would keep going, so I'd come to hours or a day or so later, and the menu would be on from the DVD. You remember when the menus of DVDs? And like, I wouldn't know how long that was happening, and I'm like, all right. I'd shake it off, I'd put it back together, I'd hit play, and around the same time, there she'd go. And it's over, and then I'd come back. So I've seen the first 25 minutes of both of those movies an innumerable amount of times. And this is like, we used to have Blockbuster. I have a Blockbuster card that told tales. Like, how many times are you gonna rent that? Until I see the whole thing, you know? It's, that's, you know, and I didn't think that was a problem. I didn't think that was an unmanageable life, right? So on and so it went, and my hostage, Jeff, he took me to a wedding in Vegas. I don't remember the whole weekend. For a time, he had me thinking we had gotten married because he thought it would be funny to show me how messed up I was, you know? And he got to a place where he thought that I needed to stop and stay stopped. And I thought that he needed to get off my back. Not because what I was doing was working, but because when I wasn't drinking, I was so full of fear. I was so full of anxiety. I was so scared of the world and everything in it. I was just scared. I couldn't tell you what I was scared of. I couldn't tell you what they were going to find out. I had job in network engineering, because in 1997, that was what you do. It was the dot-com bubble, right? You get in there and you make your dot-com money. And coming from, you know, the lifestyle that I came from, it was a really good option, so that's what I did. And I don't know, man, like I had a wardrobe, I had a nice car, I had this career, I was hollow as a reed, you know, the wind could blow right through me. I had no sense of self, I had no sense of self-worth. I didn't think anything belonged to me, I didn't think I deserved anything. And I had this guy that had put up with me at that point about 2 years, telling me that I needed to do something about it. So when people talk about coming into AA because they were gonna lose a relationship or because they need to get a card signed, I don't give a crap. I'll sign your card. Because the deal is, I came into AA to keep a guy, and that was nearly 20 years ago, you know? I don't care why you come here. I don't care if you come here because you like free coffee. If you stay long enough, you start to get the idea that maybe there's something else here. I went to my very first meeting. It was in the church that I grew up in, the United Methodist Church. And it was in the same classroom I took, I don't know what it's called, communion school? I don't know. So that you can make your communion, you sit down with the reverend, pastor, the head guy, and you talk about, clearly I've done well in my religious studies. And I sat in the little chairs, right? It was like little classroom chairs, little kid chairs. So I'm sitting there with my knees up around my ears, and my dad came with me. Now remember, Tommy Chong, Fu Manchu, 6'3", 135 pounds. Dude looked like Lurch. It was frightening. Because he had like my bone structure, he had that jaw, but there was like nothing else there. He looked very severe. And he wore a snowsuit because it was always cold. So he looked like a creepy guy in the full body snowsuit with a belt, work boots, a beanie, and he's standing in the back. So like just this gentleman over here with the sweater, he's doing what my dad did. But he had a beanie on and a full snowsuit. And it's a closed meeting. He's not identifying himself as an alcoholic. And I'm sitting there with my knees up around my ears, and I'm like, oh God, they're gonna, like I'm just so not okay. And they just kind of like looked over, like, all right. Maybe they thought he was Secret Service. I have no idea. But they didn't ask him to leave. They didn't ask me to leave. They didn't make a big deal out of it. They let me stay. A bunch of women came at me with a phone list. They were like, call me. I'm like, absolutely not, never, ever. Am I ever gonna do that? I was like, thanks for your time. It was like, I was young. I was like, there was a lady in the back and she had her kids there. I was like, what is like, it was just wild. I was like, there's a whole like subculture that I don't want to be any part of, but apparently this is the only thing. So I went back, right? And being the alcoholic that I am, I want to do it right. I want to do it right. I want to be the best at it. So I was going to do it right and be the best at this too. And that lasted for 28 days. And I drank again. And why I drank again is just occurred to me that I probably should. And I was in a meeting and I was like, I'm all set. And that started the first of 14 relapses in 10 months. And it was the Alive Again group. They gave me a key to the church. I had a coffee commitment for the 7 p.m. Sunday meeting. And looking back on it, you think these people were out of their mind. Like, why would you give this every third Tuesday? I would go to the women's meeting and they'd say, is anybody new or coming back? And they'd just slowly turn their head to look at me. And every other week, I'm Beth, I'm an alcoholic, I'm coming back. And they go, welcome back, baby. They didn't take my key. They didn't tell me to stop making coffee. And it's like there are times where I would show up so early to make coffee because I was still drunk from the night before. I didn't want to run into anybody. But that stupid coffee commitment kept me coming back. Like, I might have been one of the people that, like, you know, stole the cookies. I might have been one, you know, they didn't make me treasurer. They weren't like, hey, let's give her money. They weren't totally out of their mind, but they just loved me until I could get to a place where I could put my hands down, because for 10 months, almost to the day, I could not put my hands down. I was in the ring. I was fighting. I was going to figure it out. It never occurred to me that I wasn't going to be able to figure it out. And I use a lot of loose terms because it's really hard to describe a miracle. It's also equally hard to describe a surrender, right? I was never going to figure out how to stay stopped. And my sponsor at the time, her name was Wanda. She is still one of the most amazing human beings on earth. She made me sit down. So my last drunk, I had 80-something days of sobriety. I had 80 days dry. And Wanda was going to New York for Thanksgiving. And that year, in 2003, Thanksgiving was very late. Like the way that the date numbers of the month went, right? So that's what my sobriety day being November 29th, that was Thanksgiving week. And I was house sitting for her. Again, I don't know that I would ever let anybody with 80 days of sobriety house sit for me, but here we are, right? This is my story. And she had a cat named Pounce, Pounce de Leon, and I was not supposed to let the cat out of the house, and I was supposed to clean the litter box, and I was supposed to make sure that the oil heat stayed on because the oil tank was at the top of the hill, the house was at the bottom of the hill, and sometimes it froze coming down the line. That was like the job. And Wednesday night, I met her sponsor at the meeting at St. Jude, and then promptly went to the liquor store. Because on Saturday, I was leaving for Tortola with the hostage, and the thought of a drink occurred to me. If you are house sitting your sponsor's house and her cat, and you think it's a good idea to drink in her basement, you might have a problem with drinking. In case you're still trying to relate my story to yours. The deal is, right, like I had all the knowledge I needed to have about alcoholism. I had been coming to meetings, I had listened to your stories, I had the gist of it, right? I had not yet had that sufficient first step experience to understand that on my own unaided will, I would not be able to stay stopped. I had the experience of once I start, I can't stop. Clear on that. Once I start, I didn't want to stay stopped. Once I started, it was like, check please. I'm going to Blockbuster. I'm gonna rent myself my big fat Greek wedding. I will see you in 4 days. Toodaloo. And that, you know, like that's because I was arrogant. I really believed that I wouldn't die. I really believed that I wouldn't suffer some physical consequence or kill somebody with my car, right? Like that was my arrogance. I didn't ever try to stop once I started, but sure as heck did I try to stay stopped, man. Like I did not want to drink again. I just didn't. I did not. So the idea that the program is for people who really want it, not people who needed it, man, I wanted it too. Like the program is for people who surrender. And that's the bottom line. I could not get with the spiritual aspect of this program until I was thoroughly convinced that I cannot do this on my own. I can't. I cannot. And I can tell you that today, I have no more ability to stay stopped than I did in 2003. I am certain of that. I have a relationship with a higher power. I have a relationship with you all. And some days I lean on your relationship with your higher power because I'm angry with mine. Because I didn't get my way, because something didn't go the way I thought it should go. whatever it is, self grew back, who knows? But that connection to and through you saves my life 100% of the time. So I go, I let the cat out of the house, pounce. I mean, he was like scared crap once he got out of there, so he just sat back on the porch like, will she ever let me back in? So he came back in, my sponsor showed up, she was on a first date with a man she ended up marrying. They brought me to a detox, and there I was again, right? I'm supposed to be on this plane to Tortola, and now I'm in detox again. And I just I felt the give, I felt the, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how this is going to work. I just felt the resistance drop, And from that moment to this, right, I have given everything that I can to this program. I have repeatedly gone through the work. I have gotten the gift of working with other women and going through the work with them. And I think that is, that is one of the greatest joys of this program, is to share your passion for something that saved you from the brink, right? With another woman. For me, it's women. For you, it might not be. And create that opportunity for them to put their hand in God's. And on through the years, man, so I was 24, right? I'm 44 now. So sobriety just looks different. It gets different, and that's a good thing. But man, if I judge my present day Beth by who Beth was when she was 25, by who Beth was when she was 30, Ron had sent a text. He said, you haven't been here in 5 years. And I was like, well, that makes sense. On October 7th, I celebrated my 5th year wedding anniversary. And September 2nd was my daughter's 4th birthday. And October 24th will be my son's 2nd birthday. So for 5 years, I've been hustling, right? But I'm hustling in a different way. I'm making people. And I mean, I've been doing that longer, but was successful in making people in the last 5 years. But that just got weird. Sorry. Insight into me that you did not need. But the first, I want to say 10 years of recovery looked like me figuring out who I was, right? It looked like me going to college at night and doing the job I was doing and deciding I didn't want to be in .com. I didn't really like what I was doing. It's like you start to wake up in yourself in this program, right? You start to figure out who you are when you're not trying to be whoever it is everybody else wants you to be. When you're not trying to assimilate or hide or blend in. When you start to grab onto your own character. I was 2.5 years sober when my mom passed away. And that was wild because I thought to myself, like, I didn't want to drink, but my mom, was the opinion in my head. Everybody's got the committee. I had Dawn. She's just telling me what's wrong and what's wrong with me. And when my mom passed, how am I ever going to do this without a mom? I was 26, and AA sent me, God sent me the angels that were my mother's age that became my network. And they went to my college graduation. They helped pack me up to move me down south to go to school. They were on the other end of the phone where I'm like, the turkey is still frozen and it is actually Thanksgiving. And I don't know what to do about this. I can't get my hand in its butt. And they're like, okay, so this is what you do, you know what I mean? And like, cause who do you call? Like, right? Like, it's like Google wasn't that much of a thing yet. They helped me out, you know? And that's how God works in my life, right? Every time I have needed a teacher, a guide, a friend, a message, God has sent that exact person. My job is not to find that person. My job is not to vet that person. Because there have been plenty of people in my life who have a message for me that I'm like, oh, no. I'm all set, thanks. I don't know what you think you know, but you know what I mean? Like that vetting process, my arrogance had to be really culled down because I would have missed so much if I thought I was the smartest person in the room or had the answer or knew how it was supposed to go. If I knew how life was supposed to go, I wouldn't have the things that I have. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have the joy that I have because I married a man who has 2 ex-wives. Who's doing that? Like, you clearly can't stay married. You don't, right? He is my person. I still might end up being an ex-wife, but today, he's also sober. He will celebrate 10 years this coming. And growing alongside somebody is a wild adventure, right? There is a lot of letting go of what you think you know about how it's supposed to go. The idea that, you know, I would go to school and, like a good example, I ride a motorcycle and I had to wait until my mom died before I could do that because she was like real clear that that's not something that was gonna happen for me. And I loved it and it was awesome. And then I decided to like get married and start a family, so I put that away. And it was like, that's not a thing I'm gonna do for right now, for my own reasons. I do what you do, but for my own reasons, I put that away. The idea that when I started the journey that it would look like that never occurred to me. I never thought I would have children. Sometimes I think I probably should not have had children. They're really hard. And they are always there. Like, always there. My husband has a picture of me this afternoon. I'm laying on the Papazon, curled up as if I'm getting kicked, because I am. And there's a 2-year-old that's on my physical back, and then the 4-year-old is wrapped up in my belly, and it just looked like I'm being assaulted, but I'm sleeping. And that's wild. I did not want that, and now I would not want to miss that. You know, I lost my dad. I was 30, and what that looked like is that I had 4 years to get to know that guy without my mom. Like, he was a very different person, getting to know him without my mom. And I got to show up for them sober. I got to hold their hand and be there with them through the end of their life. And that's a huge gift, because I scared the hell out of them, right? Like, they would find me under the kitchen table or go to open the door and I would be passed out in front of it and they'd have to like push my body. And I look at my kids and I cannot imagine what I put my parents through. Because I mean, I couldn't get it together. I couldn't, you know? And having the experience of knowing that I can't stay stopped, I keep coming here. I was talking about this in the car. Like, I really believe that if I drink, I will die. And I think the cruelness of it is that I won't die quick. You know, I got sober up in the Sussex County area, and there was a guy, his name was Milkman Larry. And I don't know if that's actually his name, but that's what they called him. And he was wet brain. And he would come to meetings, and sometimes he'd have accidents in the meeting. Like, that is the thing I fear the most, right? Like that Johnny get your gun thing, like trapped in your broken mind, or it's just so wild. And all I gotta do, right, is keep digging. Keep digging. I have to keep going in, finding the broken parts of me. Because an inventory when I was 24 looks very different than an inventory when I'm 44, because my disease grew with me too. And it is creative, and it knows the language, right? And it knows how to fly under the radar. And now it's just a very raw, he didn't do what I think he should. John, my husband, did not do what I think he should. Gary, my boss, didn't do what I think he should. Really, I don't get to play God. People don't follow the script, and it's much quicker, because we're going right to ego. We're going right to a complete centered self, the idea that I know how this should go. And if I'm really living in that third step, right, if I'm turning it over to God to do what he will with me, then all of that agenda, gone. It's gone. I don't get to have an agenda. If I'm doing this, right, living life on life's terms, wearing life like a loose garment, all the bumper stickers, if I'm doing that, my agenda is gone. So I can have this loose idea of what I think I might want to accomplish, or a loose idea of what I think needs to go. And then I'll see what God thinks about that, right? My practice looks very different now, where it's, my conversations with my sponsor are very different. Mindfulness has come into play. The idea that I'm gonna get to a meeting every day is over for me right now. And I may get back to that, but I can't do that right now. We have a whole chapter about the family afterward, and continue to show up for your family. And sometimes you grow a family right in the middle of your sobriety, and what that looks like. And my kids know that, I go to meetings. They don't know what those meetings are about or what mommy does at those meetings. They ask me why I put makeup on today. Mommy went to a meeting because she needed to talk in front of a group of people, but at the end of the day, this is the only life that I know anymore. And I just can't imagine not giving it back. I'm working with a woman, I was saying this in the car on the way over too. I'm working with a woman, I call her a flaming hot Cheeto. She is a flaming hot Cheeto. She is just, I adore her, right? But she's still trying to do, and I used to do it, right? She's trying to do it without doing it, right? And it's all right, but that, that's not gonna work. And just slowly unrolling the steps out before her. We read once a week when she remembers that we're reading, and, finding that connection through the work. I don't know. I can never do enough for everything that I've been given. So it doesn't make sense to me when people are like, I'm good now. I've gotten what I've needed from this, because I have an absolute responsibility to work with another woman and share what I've been given. And the idea that I'm always going to want what I have is hard, right? Because sometimes I have a dumpster fire, and that's been my experience. But aside from the dumpster fire, I have a way of approaching that. I have had a change in thinking sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. I no longer use alcohol as a solution. And for me, that makes everything else possible. And I really appreciate being here tonight and you guys giving me your time and allowing me to be of service. And I think we're at that sweet spot where I've run out of things to say and you've run out of meeting to hold. So Do we close in the usual manner? You're going to close? Thank you very much.
Okay, again, I'm Brian, I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements and we'll wrap things up here. First and foremost, I want to thank Beth for coming out here tonight and delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery. As was mentioned before the meeting, right, the food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock, so feel free to show up early, enjoy the refreshments, the coffee that we put out. If you want to get involved with this group, we have positions for service available. We also have commitments at treatment centers, hospitals, institutions, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, if you want to get involved and help come out, bring a message of hope and recovery to the sick and suffering, we're always looking for people to help out with that. There's always the meeting after the meeting, so if you're out there, if you're new, if you're struggling, hang out. We'll be a group of us hanging out after the meeting. I want to thank everybody for helping out with the meeting. Thanks to our greeters, our readers. Thanks everybody. Thanks to Miss Kay for taking care of the kitchen there. But one more time, let's give one more round of applause to our speaker. Thanks. And if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing. Oh yeah, we usually form a line to thank our speakers. I forgot, we usually form a line to thank our speakers as they come here on their own time and expense, so we form a line in the front here and thank them personally. But if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing. We'll close with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,